Fahrenheit, it's 67 degrees Fahrenheit, 213,324 miles on the odometer. It is May 12th, 2024. I want to talk about the guitar, just like other instruments that people may play, even speaking, to sit in solemn silence on a dull, dark dock in a pestilential prison with a lifelong walk. This is Kitty. I found him at the Carrollton place, the mansions at Sunset Ridge. So I was just saying that so I could talk for a minute. The guitar, you build certain levels throughout your life. Let's say like Eric Clapton takes a month off of playing the guitar. So he could probably return back to the guitar within a few hours and brush himself back up to pace. And it can happen with different types of instruments that you play. Some people play multiple instruments like guitar, the trumpet, the drums. I think Elliott Smith played like 5 or 6 different instruments that he could play and go back and forth. Daniel Johnston, who was a folk hero, was amateur at the guitar, but he could play it very well, enough to get himself through a concert, and he could play the chord organ very well as the piano. And there was probably a few other instruments as well. But what I mean is that if you spend a lot of time away from your instrument, and I was talking to Linda about the guitar, about how to hold the guitar, and how pretty much, here's the butterfly, pretty much everyone has their own way of playing guitar. But if you look at classical, like the Oscar Schmidt that I have, and you sat down with a classical guitar player, he would say, even to Johnny Depp, to Eric Clapton, well, no, not Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton's a bad example. Johnny Depp, even Keith Richards, okay? Maybe David Bowie's not a good example, but there's a few guitar players, they would not hold the guitar the way that their instructor probably taught them to, or they would not hold the guitar the way a classicist or a classical guitar player would hold it. For one thing, they have electrics, so you can hold the electric. I mean, David Lynch lays it on his lap. So it's not, when I tell Linda, I said, look, don't hold it this way, it's wrong. What I'm trying to do is you want to try to teach them the right way. And they'll venture, your student will venture away from the rules. They all will, even the best. But you have to teach what you think is right so that they know that they're not completely, like this is the be-all, end-all way of playing the guitar, because that shows variety, right? So if I learn from a flamenco player and they go, well, actually you do this, well, you listen to that and you correct yourself and you try to be what is known as right, even though eventually you'll go your own way with the guitar. Do you see what I'm saying? I was trying to say, well, it doesn't go on this leg, it goes on your other leg so that it's counterbalanced with your body, and it's an acoustic. This is a classical. You want to first start where your thumb is behind. And listen, every single guitar player breaks the thumb rule on how they hold the neck of the guitar. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But if you have a standard way, and this is for like classic training, you can go from ground zero and then build your way up. You have to have some kind of maybe rules, so then you can learn to break those rules and even be better than the rules. You want to be better than the rules. So really there's no way to do it, but you have to pretend like there is. That way you have something you can BS about if you're going to try to be like an instructor, which I'm not doing. I'm just giving basic lessons to Linda. We may go to the Guitar Center and get real lessons. I need them myself. 636 2.3.
A Beethoven, Beach, Ravel, and more, open to all.
$734, 1.9. $802.8, 2.7. Kind of like this 3D aspect of Google Maps. You can like see through the buildings. Wonder what it looks like on Vision Pro. That's what's interesting. Vision Pro's got a lot of attention. cool to kind of see how these lights function through these four-way stops in Fort Worth and the Sundance Square area. Just to kind of get a record for posterity. This is Bass Hall right here. And the seraphims, or the giant angels, will be coming up right about here. Right there. You can see them right there. Right next to the Cheesecake Factory. Blowing the trumpets. Trumpet was the first instrument that I played. Then I moved on to the guitar later. And then whatever this thing is, which captures a music of visuality and some sound. And yeah, you can capture music with it too. I like these little... This was a good town to choose for Logan's Run in the 70s, especially the water gardens. It was a good area for something like Logan's Run. Now this horse that's coming up over here, this is the horse that you would take, well, it's a fountain that you would take your horse to drink. And this was the original spot. Linda and I did a mime, little pantomime of it. And that's the first place the horses would get water. So you'd take your horse or pony and you would get water for the horse. Whatever type, maybe mule, maybe it was a mule, a donkey, or whatever it is that you brought to town to Fort Worth, that was the watering hole for your animal. And Linda and I did a little pantomime before that that fountain. Now this right here is the Sisters of Confederacy, and I think Linda read some stuff off that. Right off North Houston. We're on Belknap, or I think it's pronounced Belknap. Sometimes people say Belknap, but it's Belknap. That is right there. Talks about the Daughters of the Confederacy, which is a kind of a stone. It's kind of a cornerstone and an important place for the beginning parts of our revolution. Now, we've been in a revolution since 1776. The country's been at civil war before the Civil War happened. I mean, we're still there. I mean, it's not, there's no, people kind of pretend like it's not there. It was declared in 1860, but it just continued on. Just in a different, people just use different things for fighting. But we have disagreements. It's going on right now in the White House. We had one on January 6th. We'll have one again. We don't know how far it'll go. Like, for example, if you compare it to what Palestine and Israel, whether it's Israel or whether it's Palestine, if that is a country, which it is a country, there are borders. But if you look at that, that is kind of a civil war. What went on with Ukraine and with Russia is very, very similar to a civil war. Now, the North American Civil War, they call it the war between the states, it did not stop in 1865. There was rebuilding and a peace treaty to say, okay, well, listen, I'm not going to shoot your cannonball, but the stuff that went on with the U.S. Marshals at Townhouse West and all that, that's all part of the Civil War. Those guys were Yankees. They were from Michigan. And they got here with their own freedom and the things that they wanted to do, and they pushed it, and they pushed it, and they pushed it. And our soldiers had to, as polite as they could, escort them away into the opposite of freedom for now, until they return back, if they choose to turn back to Michigan. Listen, it's hard in Michigan. I used to live in Maine. Now you could say, well, Cole, that sounds crazy. What do you mean Civil War? Well, a lot of times people get away with certain things because of where they're from, and you got to trace the nationality of the person to a certain extent, or at least the origins, to understand what Civil War is all about anyway. The Civil War was a fight, or it was a war between the states from the North and the South for political ideals, all right, and money was involved. That's never ended. You know, the things that New York wants are very different than the things that what Texas wants, right? So if a woman decides to get an abortion in this state and she goes through with it, she'll go to prison for what's known as murder. Now that's seemed very different in New York, where in New York, it's not so much that, okay? And this will bring about great suffering for our country until we can decide on what is life. And your nationality believes that life doesn't begin here, but our nationality and our types of people believe that life begins at conception. So there will be, there will be disagreement and there will be war. There will be war. It's obvious. It's already happened. January 6th was just a little taste. And what happened in Israel, and all that stuff has to do with different ideals and nationality and origin. All of that stuff that went on the music festival and that day with Israel and Palestine, and now there's protests. All that stuff is far from being over. It's far from being over. A lot of us will watch how the outcome happens. It all depends upon obedience and behavior. If it will continue to a certain higher degree. Now, there's an exciting movie that I do want to see with Kirsten Dunst. It's called Civil War. It's not called like the North American Civil War or anything. It's just called Civil War. And that explains probably maybe some of what I'm talking about. 831.4, 2.2. All right, 8578, 3.5, it's a two-parter. All right, next delivery is 9:16, 7 minutes, 3.1. This guy's name is Nate. All right, this is a redo. Well, it's a follow-up is what I call it. Those antipastas can just slip through the air. It's always something like an antipasta though, isn't it?